They know what I'm working on. They know where the next level is. They know that I'm right now knocking on the door, not of another Capitol police officer lying. They know that I'm knocking on their door now.
You're about to expose the Department of Justice itself?
Absolutely. You don't think for a second that Agent Lazarus decided just off the top of his head one day that he would create a scenario knowing that he was not even in the same building at that time. You don't think that he came up with that on his own, do you?
Hey everyone, great to be back with you, joined today by Steve Baker, and it looks like the time has finally come that we've been talking about where the DoJ is finally following through with their threat and asking you to turn yourself in, Steve, apparently for your journalism. Yeah. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks, Ivory. I'm glad you always. I wish the circumstances were different this time.
I know. So you're supposed to be turned in self-surrender tomorrow. Tell me what you know about what you're going to be charged with.
They haven't told me yet. We only know, they have told my attorneys that I'm only going to be charged with misdemeanors. That's the fullest extent. We don't know how many. We don't know what they are yet. We can imagine because most of the J6 defendants are hit with the four, same basic misdemeanors, unless they've concocted something else and, special for me in particular. So we don't know, but we will know at 7 o'clock tomorrow morning, because as soon as when I say they, as soon as the FBI notifies the Department of Justice that I have turned myself in, then they will unseal my charging documents and immediately notify my legal team what they are.
So you don't even know what you're charged with, what you're supposedly guilty of. You just have to turn yourself in. And this is after month of just exposing January 6th corruption. You've recently joined The Blaze, and they have an article breaking down some of the big stories that you're exposing associated with shenanigans with January 6th. And the latest one you put out was, why was Kamala Harris at the DNC, not the Capitol, on January 6th? You also shone light on the pipe bomb, which was apparently a scam. Right. Can you break down your recent reporting about whether is this retaliation?
Yeah, well, look, it would be easy for us to speculate and to say that it is retaliation. I think it is to a certain degree. For one thing, I have been poking the bear in the eye for 3 years now, rather aggressively and frequently. And they are not happy with me. And we know that because we have sources inside the Department of Justice. We have sources inside the FBI. We have sources inside the Capitol Police. We have captured communications about me in some of these departments, and internal messages and emails. And we know that they're not happy. We know that they're following my stories. And we know even as much as a year ago, I had a friendly journalist with a source inside DOJ in DC who messaged me, or actually phone called me at 6:30 one morning exactly a year ago and said, we have information from inside DOJ that they're aware of the stories that you're working on. They're not happy about it, and we think that you probably ought to be careful and looking over your shoulder.
But this is blatantly against the First Amendment. That's why the First Amendment's there, is to protect you in a situation like this. So,
well, yeah, of course, but we don't live in that world anymore, Ivory.
But does the DOJ get repercussions for trying to persecute someone who's exposing what they don't want exposed?
Of course they don't. They control the levers of power right now. And the only thing that we have right now is this slimmest, narrowest of majorities in the House of Representatives. And as a result of that, it's so slim that these guys are acting like cowards right now, chicken littles, because they are afraid of losing that majority by taking any unnecessary risks. They don't know if they're going to keep the majority in November. They don't know if they're going to keep that majority between now and November. And so other than just the smallest, I'm talking about this many decent people up there right now.
Thank you to the sponsor of my coverage, National Gold Group. Gold has soared past 2,100 an ounce in 2023. Donald Trump recently warned that the U.S. dollar, no longer being the world standard, will be our greatest defeat in 200 years. Military conflicts in Israel, Yemen, and Ukraine, plus rate cuts on the table, are fueling gold's meteoric rise. Several major banks are all forecasting sizable rate cuts in an election year, and some say this is Biden's Hail Mary attempt to help keep the White House. Meanwhile, our national debt is skyrocketing higher. There's a direct correlation to the national debt and the price of gold. The higher the debt goes, the higher gold's value goes. Why are so many Americans adding physical gold and silver to their portfolios and retirement plans? Learn why. You can call America's own precious metals company, National Gold Group, today. Mention my channel, Ivory Hecker. You'll always receive best-in-class service from America's conservative precious metals leader. National Gold Group has your IRA fee waiver program on qualifying rollovers. Call 888-617-5927. Get a free investor guide today. National Gold Group is a Consumer Affairs top-rated gold IRA dealer. Call 888-617-5927. That number in the description. Remember, there's always a risk of loss, and past performance is not indicative of future results.
Other than just the smallest, I mean, I'm talking about this many decent people up there right now who are acting bravely and speaking out. There's just not that many, and certainly not a coalition large enough to stop this from happening. And I'm not just talking about me. I'm talking about this overwhelming and self-evident to anybody with a modicum of honesty and common sense of political persecution that is happening against J6 defendants in particular. We can compare case by case to how they handled these protesters to how they handled individual protesters who are doing exactly the same things or worse in the 2020 riots. We can compare these protesters to the exact same type of people that are coming across our border illegally, who are going out on crime sprees in multiple states until they kill somebody in Georgia. We can compare how they're catch and release, and letting these people go, dropping charges. But when it comes to a January 6th defendant, if you went inside the Capitol for 10 minutes and took a selfie and then went out peacefully, behaved yourself, broke no property, did no damage, attacked no law enforcement, hurt no one, went home, you got swatted. You got raided by the FBI at your house. Another clear example of political persecution is the fact that before January 6th, the FBI never swatted a misdemeanor defendant in the history of that agency.
Wow.
They didn't deal with misdemeanor defendants. They didn't handle misdemeanor defendants before January 6th. And suddenly January 6th happens, and a misdemeanor defendant is basically treated like it's misdemeanor terrorism. Is that what this is? Is there such a thing? Because that's how they're handling it.
Unreal. But what's really concerning with your case is now they're infringing right into free press. Now, the trespassing at the Capitol is one thing, and you debate about whether that's infringing on free speech, the right to assemble, because not all of it was peaceable. But yours, I mean, there's no evidence, to my knowledge, of you doing anything but peaceful news gathering that day.
Yeah.
In fact, at the time, you were anti-Trump, anti-Biden, just trying to collect the facts at the time, right? So you're just there documenting history, and everything we could see pointed to that. And then a few months later, you have to meet with the FBI, and they say they're going to charge you with racketeering, was it?
Interstate racketeering. That's right.
Yeah. And then and then you put it on blast. You went to me and some other podcasters, and we exposed that the DOJ appears to be coming after an independent journalist. So they dropped the case. And now years later,
yeah, they didn't necessarily drop it, but I think they took my file and put it under the bottom of a pile because it took them another 2.5 years to finally do this.
And then these past few months, with Blaze.
Yeah.
You've just been hitting them month after month with these big stories. You expose perjury in regards to January 6th. You're one of the few few journalists who did the tedious work. I feel like very few journalists across corporate media or anywhere do tedious work anymore in this fast-paced society. But you were doing the tedious work of poring over the surveillance footage from the Capitol, those hours and hours of footage, and doing some other tedious work. And you were able to expose lying under oath.
Yeah.
And I mean, what you did was the epitome of journalism, as far as I can tell. So do you think this is why the DOJ is coming after you, because you exposed this stuff just in the past few months?
Yeah, I mean, they certainly have a rationale that they don't need retaliation or retribution to come after me because I went inside the Capitol. Look, as we talked about before.
But journalists have to be able to cover what's happening. In fact, journalists were in the Capitol.
Yes.
And when something happens, you have to follow the action, right?
Well, that's what I did. You know, I followed the story where the story went. And I had no idea that a melee was going to break out. I had no idea what was going to happen that day. But as the story developed, I followed the story, as 60 other journalists who went through broken windows and busted open doors did that day. Now, there were already probably 100 other journalists, or maybe more than that, already inside the Capitol by invitation, specifically there to cover the certification of the Electoral College vote. That was, it's a ceremonial day. And even though the COVID restrictions were in place, and they had all the photographers in there, they had journalists, print media, all of that was television media were inside the Capitol to cover that event. Left journalism, right journalism, doesn't matter. They were there. But from the moment of the first breach of that barricade, where Ray Epps was famously at that first barricade breach, the journalist who breached that line right there, technically, they broke the law. Now, left, right, or otherwise, if you're going to charge one, you have to charge them all.
What, because you need a press pass to go into our nation's capital?
You cannot breach a barricade by law, or a restricted area, or a police tape line by law, regardless of what credential you have. If you had a congressional press pass and you breached that line and then breached the window or a door after it was already broken and you went inside, technically you broke the law. You cannot breach a police line with any press badge without the permission of law enforcement. Now, law enforcement allows that all the time. As you know, you're a journalist. You have experience in this. Law enforcement will look the other way. They'll wave press in, show them your badge. They'll let you in to come in because they understand, law enforcement understands that the media needs to, for the good of the public, for the public service and public interest, document certain proceedings. But the second that a law enforcement officer tells a journalist it's time for you to leave, your badge means nothing at that moment. Nothing whatsoever. 60 journalists entered that restricted area, and if they don't charge them all, then they are selectively, by political alignment, prosecuting these journalists.
Have you talked to some of these other 60 who haven't been charged? Are they scared that you're the first and they're next?
I've tried to reach. I've actually talked to quite a few others that were on, the right-leaning side of the media. Some that were charged, and some that haven't been. There's some that were on the right side of the media that weren't charged and haven't been yet, and they're scared. And so one of them in particular is actually living out of the country right now. He's not been charged. He was interviewed. He was interviewed by the FBI. He's never been charged, and he asked me, on a private conversation, should I come home or not? I said, if you like where you're at, stay.
Yeah, these are precarious times for freedom. Can you tell me what you found out about this pipe bomb? It's one of your latest stories that I'm sure the DOJ wasn't a fan of, and it was a confusing story. Some big outlets on the left and the right got it wrong. So maybe you can.
Yeah, there's still a tremendous amount of confusion about this story. The first thing to understand is that there were two bombs. There was one left at the RNC, ostensibly. There was one left at the DNC, that's Republican National Committee headquarters, the Democratic National Committee headquarters, and my interest was in the one at the DNC because we were able to focus Capitol CCTV cameras on that particular bomb and that particular investigation and everything leading up to it and how it transpired afterwards. At the RNC, it was in an alley and there were no cameras there. So we don't have the privilege from Capitol CCTV to examine and investigate that. But once we got into the viewing room and we began to look at that, the first thing that was stunning, and there were other journalists that saw this, Thomas Massey, Representative Thomas Massey, he released a 7-minute video that Darren Beatty from the Revolver News did a commentary on that showed the lackadaisical response by law enforcement and by the Secret Service to the discovery of this bomb. What Darren didn't know at the time, and I didn't know he was about to do his story, is literally the night before his story came out, 12 hours or less, I released the findings that I had discovered that the person who found that DNC pipe bomb was actually a plainclothes United States Capitol Police officer. But that person had been identified by the FBI for 3 years as a passerby. Seriously, just a passerby. And they've known for 3 years that it was a Capitol Police officer. But they never identified him other than a passerby. That was the first thing that they withheld from us. The second thing that they withheld from us is that they have been telling us for 3 years that these were viable devices that could cause great injury or even death. And they withheld that. They've been saying that and spouting that line. But we found the information. We have testimony from former FBI agents that they, in their own investigation, working out of the Washington field office, assigned to the pipe bomber investigation, they were told by their special agents in charge that these were not viable devices, that these were inert devices. And then we were able to find the video after other video cameras. The cameras were by remote control swung away from and diverted from the investigation scene, which was unbelievable. Every law enforcement agency officer from every federal, local, and EOD expert, bomb squad people that I've interviewed dozens of law enforcement of all type, have all said that those cameras being diverted is the most suspicious thing that they've ever seen. They said we would never do that. Even if they were using some sort of classified technology to dismantle or dispose of or detonate those bombs, even if they were using classified technology, they would want that video to capture for training purposes, to show what they did right, to show what they did wrong, to capture the investigation scene. And instead, the key, most critical cameras in that area, 3 of them were all diverted away before the bomb squad arrived to hide the investigation.
And why do you think they wanted to hide the investigation?
I think, number one, they wanted to hide the fact that they weren't treating this in a normal manner. Over at the RNC, the Capitol Police bomb squad over there, and they're the Capitol Police, they followed everything by the book and they cordoned off the area. They had the police tape. They evacuated buildings. They did all of these things that you're supposed to do. At the DNC, they looked like it was a picnic at the park. They were still children and families still walking by within 10, 15 feet of the bomb. No Secret Service diverting them away, holding up their hands and, sorry, cross the street. Don't come over here. People were still, traffic was moving. A train less than 50 feet away, the Amtrak train track, every 30 seconds, 60 seconds, another train would pass by. They never called in and diverted the train traffic. Car traffic was still coming by for so much time. And then, of course, all of the, as I said, the lackadaisical behavior of Secret Service agents, Capitol Police, Metro Police, None of them behaved the way they're supposed to behave in a bomb situation. Then, curious, most curious of all, is why was Kamala Harris at the DNC? That's the first question. All right. She was not only the vice president elect on a highly ceremonial day. The session of Congress to certify the Electoral College vote was gavelled in by Vice President Mike Pence at 1 o'clock. The bomb was discovered at 1:05. She was not evacuated until 11 minutes later. Again, a very slow process for somebody that was, that in such close proximity to what the FBI said was a viable device.
So that indicates that the FBI and all these law enforcement agencies knew it was not actually a real bomb. Were they in on a fake bomb, or what are your?
You have to ask that question, and it's a fair question. But let's stay on Kamala Harris here for a moment. All right, we did not learn until a year later why she was. The media. The DC media, who follows, these people, they know their schedules and where their appearance schedules are. We did not learn until a year later that Kamala Harris was not at the Capitol, that she was actually at the DNC headquarters. And it was a story by Politico on the first anniversary. And I spoke to Kyle Cheney, the author of that story, at Politico, and he told me that was a total coincidence that they made that discovery on the first anniversary of the January 6th event. He said that was a complete coincidence. He said it wasn't something we were sitting on to hold for dramatic effect. And then after we knew that Kamala was in the DNC and not at the Capitol for that vote, it has been over 2 years now since the discovery that she was there. And amazingly, Ivory, she has never uttered a word about it. She has never taken advantage and made political hay out of the fact that, oh my Lord, I was that close to a bomb. Maybe it was an assassination attempt. I mean, you remember how AOC was? She says, I thought I was going to die that day. Left, right, or otherwise, a politician is going to make political hay and take advantage of that for PR purposes of being in a dangerous situation, for campaign fundraising, for any other, for whatever, sympathy within their base. And she's never mentioned it one time in 3 years. Not one time since it was discovered that she was there. Not one time has her staff or anybody in her administration come out and responded to the questions that we've been asking since we rolled these videos out. More importantly, Ivory, why hasn't the DC media ever asked her a question about that? Think about that. They've known for 2 years now where she was. Nobody of the hundreds of press gaggles, press conferences, interviews, sit downs, one-on-ones with DC media, has she ever one time been asked a question, Madam Vice President, what was it like when you discovered that you were so near such a dangerous situation on January 6th and you were just mere feet, your motorcade passed within 15 feet of a bomb? If you're a journalist, wouldn't you want to know?
Absolutely. I wonder.
I'm never going to get access to her. Her staff is never going to grant me a sit-down interview with Vice President Kamala Harris. So Why don't they ask the question?
The lack of curiosity in corporate media,
or maybe they've been told not to.
I have information on that sort of thing, on corporate media being told not to. Yes.
Yeah.
I used to be told not to ask questions, so that's a definite possibility. So you look at the strange situation with Kamala's location, the strange situation with the handling of this alleged pipe bomb. You look at the perjury under oath, lying under oath in regards to trying to make the oath keepers look worse. And then you've also been investigating Ray Epps and suspicious characters in the crowd. the fact that there were undercover feds in the crowd, looking at everything that you've been investigating. Oh, and then the incredible negligence of the Capitol Police leadership.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas officers on the ground there were flying blind, you uncovered that as well, and we listened to the police audio. So looking at everything that you've been uncovering, which who knows if that's the DOJ retaliating against you by having you turn yourself in tomorrow, but what are you gathering now from what really happened on January 6th? What's the truth?
I mean, the reality is that I know a lot more than we're even able yet to tell. Now, some people get mad at me when I make a statement like that. If you know something, you need to tell right now. No, you know the process. We have to have every I dotted, every T crossed. We have to validate. We have to double check, triple check. We have to run things by legal. We have to make sure before I mean, think about it. Think what we had to go through. It took me exactly 1 solid year to be able to release the Lazarus story. And then even on the eve of that story, multiple editors going through every word with a fine-tooth comb, running it by legal to make sure, because we were about to accuse a federal officer of perjury in a trial. I mean, this is a process that people don't understand. This is not something you do willy-nilly or half-hearted, or you don't roll the dice like that and hope you got it right. You have to get it right. And even though the mainstream media has not picked up on that story or covered that story, guess what they have not done? They've not contradicted that story, nor has the Capitol Police. And so the point being is that at the end of the day, we know much more than we are yet able to tell about who set this up and what was going on behind the scenes. And I can't wait to tell the story, but we are going to get there.
That leads to my next question. I was going to ask, are you working on something more that the DOJ is possibly shutting you down? Is this why they're finally like, you know what? He's on such a roll. He's not going to stop. We've got to have him turn himself in. They
do know that. They know what I'm working on. They know where the next level is. They know that I'm right now knocking on the door, not of another, Capitol Police officer lying. They know that I'm knocking on their door now.
You're about to expose the Department of Justice itself?
Absolutely. You don't think for a second that Agent Lazarus decided out of, just off the top of his head one day that he would create a scenario that he was, there to watch and witness the Officer Harry Dunn interaction with the Oath Keepers, knowing that he was not even in the same building at that time. You don't think that he came up with that on his own, do you?
Oh, boy. And you may have the receipts.
We might.
Well, I'm looking forward to staying tuned on this. Now, in regards to turning yourself in tomorrow, you have to, where do you have to go? You have to go to the FBI office in Dallas?
Yeah. Yep, going to the FBI field office in Dallas. I've got to be there.
You said they're telling you how to dress. Now, that's really bizarre. What's going on?
Yeah, no, they're actually we have it in an email from the assistant U.S. attorney to my attorney saying that they want me to arrive wearing shorts, a t-shirt, and flip-flops. Now, why do you think that is?
I don't know. I don't get arrested.
It's easy. Yeah, I've never been fingerprinted for anything. My biggest crime so far in my life is a few speeding tickets. And so
what's weird is I've covered crime my entire career. I was primarily a crime reporter. And I never heard of prosecutors telling the suspect how to dress when they arrest them.
Well, because this is a voluntary surrender, They're trying to make it easy on me when they transfer me to my orange jumpsuit and leg chains.
Mm, that's what it is.
That's all it can be. There is no other reason. See, they didn't have to do it this way, Ivory. They could have issued what they call something on the order of an order to appear. I could have showed up at the courthouse at the time of my arraignment in a nice sports jacket and a tie, professional looking. Could have walked into the room, sat down, waited for my arraignment. They could have fingerprinted me and taken my mug shot. You know, they didn't make. You saw Trump's mug shot. They didn't make him take off his suit and tie and put him in an orange jumpsuit. They could have done.
I'm kind of surprised that they didn't, because the obvious reason for that was to humiliate him.
But they decided, rather than going that route, that they issued an actual arrest warrant. And if I don't show up at 7 tomorrow, they'll come get me wherever I'm at. So they'll be tracking my vehicle in the morning. They'll be tracking my cell phone. They'll be tracking where I'm going, and they'll see that I'm on my way compliantly, as I've been compliant with all of their requests for the last 2.5 years. And I will compliantly arrive with my attorney, and then I will submit myself self-surrender at 7 a.m. And then at 7 a.m., as soon as I am in custody of the FBI, they will release my charging documents to my attorneys. We'll know what I'm being charged with at that moment. And then the FBI is going to do a prisoner transport of me. My attorneys have to leave, and they have to go back to the courthouse and wait for me there. And then the FBI will transport me themselves to the courthouse and transfer custody over to the U.S. Marshals, who will process me then. And then they'll put me in a holding cell, and I'll be there until 9:30, when my attorneys will then be allowed to come meet with me at that point. And then at 10 o'clock, I'm scheduled to go before the magistrate for my arraignment.
And then presumably you'd be able to just bond out, right?
Actually, we're not expecting a bond. They have told us that that I will not be detained. As recently as just a couple of hours ago, one of my attorneys was on the phone with the AUSA that has my case, and said they will not be requesting detention of any kind. So ostensibly, and this has been said to my attorneys on multiple occasions, that after I'm processed, after I'm arraigned, I will be released on my own recognizance. And that is what we expect to happen. Has that happened differently for some J6 defendants? Yes, it has. Some have gotten there for their arraignment, and then suddenly, the magistrate had an emergency, or the magistrate got COVID, and won't be in today, and so we're just going to have to hold you till Monday or Tuesday until they come in.
Well, this appears to be a stunt to send fear into other journalists, don't you think?
Oh yeah, well, it's either shut up or say the right thing. I mean, that's certainly the case with me.
Like, obviously, get you to stop your investigative work, but any other journalist who dare to be so nosy sends a message that they might get locked up too.
Right. Well,
people who know me are scared I'm gonna get locked up for some of the work I've done. The word's getting around.
Ivory, I have used you as an example more than once. You're brave. I'll never forget when I came down to Houston and was investigating that child trafficking thing, and you went out with me a couple of nights to look at that, and I was amazed. I mean, you would just right in the worst part of town, just jump out of the car, and I'm like, "Holy crap! What is she doing there?"
Oh well, that's been, as a crime reporter, that's been my whole career. I feel most comfortable in the hood. I may have been a hood rat in my last life, but I feel
right. You might have been, but it was amazing when I saw you doing that. And then of course, obviously the way and the manner in which you left Fox was bravery. And this is what it's going to take from independent journalists. Is they're just going to have to not only defy the system, sometimes defy their own companies, their own corporate existence, or they're going to have to, go independent. I'm different. I'm coming from the other direction. I'm coming from being independent my entire life to working with the Blaze. But the only reason I took that position with the Blaze was because of who they are. They didn't hire me to conform to their modus operandi. They hired me for who I am and
Right.
what I was doing. And because of that, I'm getting their support now in this situation.
That's good. I'm glad that they are shining a spotlight on what the DOJ is up to now. Um, anything else you want to say? Where can people see your arraignment and everything tomorrow?
The Blaze is going to be covering some of that. I don't know how much of it is going to be live. I know that if everything goes and stays on the up and up with the schedule, unless there's something that knocks us and derails us, at 10:30 Central Time, I should be on the court steps. In which case, if that happens on time, I will go live with Glenn Beck at that time, 10:30 Central, 11:30 Eastern. That's what we're shooting for. Obviously, anything can happen. There could be an emergency of some sort, or somebody else is placed in front of me on the docket or gets my time, and I have to wait 30 minutes. So we don't know that that's going to happen. But I will tell you that on Blaze, all of the Blaze social media, Blaze YouTube, that's Blaze, theblaze.com, the Blaze TV. As I said, YouTube, X, Facebook, all of this will be covered tomorrow by the Blaze. And I think there's a few other journalists coming into town as well.
Good. I hope that all the corporate media pays attention, because this is a precedent for all of us.
Ivory, come up.
I'll have to cover it. Well, if Blaze is covering it wall to wall, I can share that. But I'm glad that your story is being highlighted. At least this is outrageous, and I look forward to what they're trying to accuse you of. Steve, thank you for all the work you do and the fact that you don't back down in the face of all this intimidation. We need more journalists like you.
And you. Thank you, Ivory.
Oh, thank you. Great talking to you, Steve, and all the best to you tomorrow. Praying for free press to continue.
Thank you.
All right. We'll talk to you later.
Bye-bye.